Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are shifting our lens a little. We're moving away from the usual headlines, the high-level political drama,
Hmm.
and we're focusing on something much more fundamental. We're talking about the actions, the beliefs, really the sheer energy of citizens themselves.
Right, specifically on the African continent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to get a sense of the engine room of democracy there, but not through, some foreign policy report. We want to see it through the pulse of the people.
And that's such a critical angle. It's just too easy for global analysis to get stuck on, say, electoral conflicts or big macroeconomic shifts.
Yeah, and you miss what's happening on the ground.
You miss the incredibly complex, robust, and sometimes, quiet civic life that really defines day-to-day governance. So for you, the listener, we want to unpack how Africans are actually engaging politically and civically.
And see how those patterns might challenge our sort of traditional ideas of what democracy even looks like. Okay, so let's set the stage here. We are diving into a massive, really authoritative source today. What's the material we're analyzing, and what's our mission for this deep dive?
Our mission is to pull out the most important nuggets of insight from the 2025 Afrobarometer Flagship report. It's called African Insights 2025. Citizen engagement, citizen power.
Afrobarometer. So this isn't just a simple opinion poll.
Oh, not at all. Think of it more like a deep diagnostic assessment. It's measuring the quality of democracy and governance, but seen directly through the citizen's experience.
And the scope here is, and it's vital to understand this. This is not a quick snapshot.
Yeah.
Tell us about the breadth of this data.
Well, this is where the report gets its authority. The data is all based on nationally representative surveys, and they were conducted in a staggering 39 African countries.
39.
39. That huge geographic coverage, it represents more than 3/4 of the entire continent's population. So the goal of the research, and really our goal today, is to assess the overall levels of engagement, figure out who exactly is participating, how they're participating, and maybe most critically, what encourages or discourages them from stepping up.
So we have to get beyond just the voting booth and look at the whole ecosystem of citizen power, the mechanics of participation.
That's the perfect way to put it.
So let's start with that baseline then.
Yeah.
What's the most fundamental finding when it comes to, say, formal political action?
The most fundamental finding is, well, probably exactly what you might expect. Voting. It remains the single most common form of participation across the continent.
So turnout is generally strong.
A large majority of citizens reported that they did vote in their most recent national elections. So that's the solid foundation of participation we're starting from.
But I'm guessing if we stop there, we miss the entire point.
You miss everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The report really stresses that participation is defined far, far beyond the ballot box. If you only focus on voting, you're just measuring one single event in a cycle that can be 4 or 5 years long.
Right.
The definition of civic life has to be much, much broader to actually capture the daily realities of people.
So what does that broadened definition include? What are we talking about here?
It includes local engagement, which, is often way more important to people's lives than national elections.
Mm-hmm.
This means things like attending community meetings or contacting political leaders directly about local problems. It means actively joining political discussions or even just loosely affiliating with a political party.
Yeah, these things common.
The finding is that these activities are all widespread, yes, but this is key. Their frequency varies a lot depending on the country, the region, and even the demographic group we're looking at.
Let me break that down for our listener who might think of participation in a more, say, American or European model. If voting is high, but contacting a leader is relatively low, what does that tell us about the trust in those formal institutions?
It suggests that access and maybe perceived efficacy are fractured. For example, while the report confirms that high baseline of voting, when you drill down into those other activities, the numbers can drop off pretty sharply.
So it's about access.
It's about access and it's about responsiveness. The ability to attend a community meeting or a local gathering is just so much higher than the ability to, say, contact a national elected official. Those local venues are simply more accessible. It shows that power is often exercised closest to home.
That distinction, the gap between national participation and local engagement, that takes us right to what you called the aha moment of this report, the key feature that really distinguishes African civic life.
It really is.
What did Afrobarometer find about collective action?
What's so fascinating here is that political participation in Africa goes way beyond those formal elections. It shows this remarkable resilience in collective action.
Meaning people working together outside of government structures.
Exactly. Many citizens are routinely involved in group efforts to solve local problems. We're talking about community organizing or groups petitioning for better roads or water access or even mobilizing neighborhood watch groups.
So it's citizen power being deployed constantly, not just, saved up for election day.
That's it.
What's the scale of this? I mean, how does it compare globally?
Well, the data indicates that Africans display relatively high levels of collective action and direct engagement with leaders when you compare them to citizens in other parts of the world where this stuff is tracked.
That's fascinating.
It suggests a really deeply embedded culture of self-organization and seeking mutual accountability. People aren't just passively waiting for governance to happen to them. They're actively shaping their immediate world.
And is that out of necessity or is it a cultural thing?
It's probably a mix of both. It could be out of necessity, or maybe it's due to historical patterns of governance where local initiative was always the most important thing.
Okay, but if collective action is so high, why do we still see so many deep, unaddressed local issues? I mean, the success of that action must vary wildly.
It absolutely does, and that's a crucial point of nuance here. A high level of engagement doesn't guarantee policy success.
Right.
It just guarantees persistent demands for accountability. The report is showing engagement, not necessarily satisfaction. It just proves the citizenry is willing to organize to get change, no matter how efficient the government is at responding.
That willingness is the political fuel.
It's the fuel. Now, there's another warning here. While collective action and community meetings are robust, the report also shows that something as simple as political discussion is common, but it's very unevenly distributed.
What do you mean?
It's spread unevenly across age, education level, and national context. So not everyone has the same voice in that community discussion, even if they're physically in the room.
That fragmentation, that's a perfect lead-in to the next massive area of focus, the generational divide. If participation isn't uniform, does the report show any major cracks in the foundation of engagement?
It does, absolutely. And the widest crack, pretty surprisingly, is generational.
Okay, so how does the report define the generations?
It defines young Africans as those aged 18 to 35. This is a crucial demographic that is, very soon going to define the continent's entire political trajectory.
And what's the data show for this group's participation? Is it just a simple story of youth apathy?
Not at all. Apathy would suggest a complete lack of interest. What the report actually shows is more of a lag in formal participation. Generally speaking, young Africans participate less than older adults in most of those formal civic and political activities.
Okay, so where is that lag the most pronounced? Which channels are they avoiding?
It's particularly visible in three, let's call them established traditional channels.
Which are?
Voting, attending formal community meetings, with elders or local chiefs, and contacting elected officials through those formal bureaucratic channels.
I see.
If you just look at those established pillars of civic engagement, the youth demographic shows consistently lower affiliation. It seems like they're less invested in the established processes.
So if the youth are showing lower rates of formal participation, that might sound alarming, especially for people who gauge democratic health purely by election turnout.
It would, yeah.
But if I remember the source material correctly, there's a huge exception here, a massive paradox buried in that data that just completely contradicts the apathy theory.
Ah, yes. That's the critical piece of the whole puzzle. This is what we could call the protest paradox.
The protest paradox.
While they lag in all those formal activities, youth are significantly more likely than older citizens to engage in protests. This makes protest activity the one notable, powerful exception to that general participation gap.
That is a perfect illustration of a profound political shift. So they're less engaged in the formal institutional mechanisms of democracy, the ballot box, the council meeting, but they are more likely to participate in direct, expressive, and frankly, often riskier action, like public demonstrations and organized protests. How much more likely are they?
The difference is stark. While the overall numbers vary a lot by country, the study consistently shows that, on average, citizens under 35 are up to 10 to 15 percentage points more likely to say they've participated in a demonstration or protest action than their counterparts over 50.
That's not a small difference.
It's not a marginal difference at all. It's a clear sign that when their political energy mobilizes, it takes to the streets, not necessarily to the town hall.
If we connect this to the bigger picture for the listener, this pattern has huge implications for the future of civic life. for political stability. It sounds like institutional skepticism.
Precisely. It implies that young Africans are absolutely willing to exert political power, but they see the formal political machinery as either unresponsive, too slow, or maybe even captured by older generations or entrenched interests.
So they just bypass it.
They choose a vehicle for participation protest that bypasses those formal channels. It demands immediate visibility and accountability. So formal participation lags, but that direct, expressive action is robust. This is a sign of an evolving, dynamic, democratic language.
The energy is there, the intent is there, but the preferred vehicle for that participation is just fundamentally different from what we might think of as the traditional democratic toolkit.
Exactly.
So that leads us to the core question. What motivates participation at all, whether it's in a community action or voting or a protest? What are the key drivers for engagement, given this strong yet very varied landscape?
The Afrobarometer data gives a very clear answer on what motivates people. The primary driver they identified is tied directly to accountability and performance. It is the perception of government responsiveness and the quality of democracy.
So participation isn't purely driven by some abstract sense of civic duty. It's driven by perceived utility. If I believe my voice makes a practical difference, I'll use it.
That is precisely the correlation they found. Citizens who believe their government is listening to them are significantly more likely to engage, and that's across the board.
It makes sense.
They feel that participating is a worthwhile investment of their time and their effort. And furthermore, citizens who believe their government delivers tangible services, that their tax money or their engagement results in visible benefits like better roads, schools, water access, they are also more likely to engage politically and civically.
So the expectation of being heard and the expectation of service delivery.
They're powerful motivators. They link participation to utility, not just ideology.
Now, this is a crucial point where we need to put on our learner hat and be really precise about the quality of this evidence. The report, being so authoritative, it provides a necessary warning about how we interpret these findings, right?
It does.
If we see that responsive governments have high engagement, can we definitively say that responsiveness causes engagement?
And that's the critical intellectual nuance we have to grasp. The sources remind us that while the report shows these very strong associations or correlations between high engagement and these positive perceptions, we have to be intellectually honest.
Okay.
And we have to remember these are correlations rather than proven causal relationships.
This matters because it has a huge impact on policy. If you can't prove causation, how does that change how a government should react? Does it mean, for instance, that just improving service delivery might not automatically increase formal engagement if citizens still feel that institutionally the channels are rigged or closed off?
Exactly. It makes policymaking so much more complex than just saying build a road and people will vote. It suggests that the perception of legitimacy and fairness in the institutions themselves might be the real unmeasured cause.
Which is then just correlated with both good service delivery and high engagement.
Precisely. If you simply improve services without tackling the underlying institutional mistrust, the very mistrust that drives youth to protest in the first place, you might still fail to channel that participation into formal, stable, democratic structures.
Right.
And that critical distinction is just vital for understanding the trajectory of African governance.
That depth of analysis really enhances our understanding of citizen power. We know these variables run parallel, but the direct chain of cause and effect, especially in a system that's battling institutional cynicism, is still a complicated lockbox. Okay, let's transition now to the core takeaways for you to remember from this deep dive into the Afrobarometer data.
First thing to remember, citizen participation in Africa is widespread and broad. It encompasses not just formal elections, but vigorous, constant, local community action.
Second, Africans show remarkably high levels of collective action compared to other global regions. This really underscores that local problem solving is a vital and sustained political force, independent of any national political cycles.
Third, there is a clear, and I'd say potentially destabilizing generational gap. Young people, that's 18 to 35, they lag significantly in formal participation like voting, but are much more likely to participate in high-visibility direct protest activity. That is the protest paradox in action.
And finally, the #1 driver for engagement is the perception that the government is both responsive and is delivering tangible services. Participation is driven by utility and the expectation of accountability.
And with all that in mind, here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over, which stems directly from that youth paradox and the responsiveness driver.
Okay.
If young citizens increasingly turn to direct, expressive actions like protests, while at the same time showing disinterest or a lack of representation in formal activities like voting and community councils, what does this pattern suggest about the long-term stability and trajectory of democratic institutions across the continent?
A lot of power, a lot of energy, but perhaps an increasing unwillingness to recognize the established channels as legitimate pathways to wield it. We'll leave you with that question. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.